Well, good afternoon again, everyone. Again, my name is Chris Guerin. I'm with Associated Industries of Massachusetts, and welcome to this second part of our digital transformation series, Getting the Most Productivity from Your Employees. This is an important session because, after all, that really is the promise of much of the digital technology with which we work, that is boosting productivity of our companies. I have just a few introductory remarks this afternoon. For those of you who have questions during the presentation, because there are a lot of folks on the webinar, all of you are muted. So the easiest way to ask a question, either during the presentation or immediately after, is to text that question in the text box to the right-hand side of your screen. So feel free to ask anything to our presenters today. They will stay as long as they have to make sure that all of your questions are answered. Let me anticipate one of those questions, which is, yes, we will be sending the presentation slide deck to you within 24 hours. We'll also be sending a recorded version of this webinar to you, so that if you want to share it with other people in your company, or even someone in other companies, if you find it valuable, then you're more than welcome to do that. So with that brief introduction, I'm pleased to introduce our presenter for this morning, Chandler Stevens. Chandler is Vice President of Cloud Practice at iCore Technologies, and he's going to walk through this topic with an overview, and then he's going to bring into the conversation Ben Goldfarb, who's going to share what this looks like in a real company, in this case a construction company here in Massachusetts. So Chandler, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you to all who've dialed in this afternoon, and for those of you listening to this recording. As mentioned, my name is Chandler Stevens, Vice President of Cloud Practice at iCore Technologies, and today we're really going to do a couple of different things. We're first going to talk a little bit about the this innovation wave that's occurred within cloud services, and specifically in the productivity space, to really allow for organizations of all sizes to take advantage of innovative technologies that provide high amount of productivity. And so later on in the conversation, I'll be bringing in Ben to talk a little more about his own experiences and his company's experiences in this innovation wave. So really, to kind of help set the stage, there's a couple of things we wanted to cover off on this afternoon. One was really looking at and understanding what's driving the need to access information from an anywhere and anytime perspective. And really, it's about timely information in a variety of different form factors, being able to access information from a traditional PC, being able to access that same level of information from, say, a mobile device or a tablet device, and having this ubiquitous connectivity throughout that entire experience. But when you're talking through about accessing information, it's important to also kind of understand what is the current state, or what are some issues that may actually impede productivity. So from a productivity perspective, many organizations who have perhaps not yet embraced this notion of online productivity services are tied down to a data center. It may be their own data center. It may be a data center that they are leveraging for hosting. But in any event, it's a data center that is, is subject to occasional downtime. So that certainly can be a factor to impede productivity. There's also this notion of a situational downtime. If you think about those customers who have sales forces, maybe remote sales forces that are in the field, meeting with customers, working through proposals, that sales organization has a need to have a connectivity back to information that the organization is using to move those opportunities along. So the ability for sales to securely access resources in a while on the road is an important scenario to think about. And of course, we're all familiar with this notion of the system downtimes, servers that crash, outages that occur. This obviously has a huge impediment to productivity. If you can't get to your email, if you can't access that Excel document, you really are stuck. You're not able to really move forward through your business day. And then, of course, there is the notion of reactive IT. Reactive meaning, there could be times when there's an unexpected patch or an unexpected server upgrade that needs to occur to address maybe a security vulnerability or to address a quality of service issue. So these are things that obviously can really have a huge impact to productivity within the organization. So really, with that in mind, we kind of turn our attention to thinking through a modern technology and understanding the trends that are allowing organizations to really provide empowerment to their employees to really raise their productivity. So for Microsoft, they have an Office 365 suite of products that span a variety of different ways to collaborate, a variety of different ways to share information, as well as a variety of different ways to provide content creation and content viewing. And just to kind of looking at this slide, you'll probably notice or recognize some of the icons in the lower right-hand corner. One particular ones that I think are very interesting is the notion of using OneNote. So Microsoft OneNote is effectively an application that allows you to capture notes either via a PC or using voice or audio. It also allows you to capture notes on other form factors like mobile devices and iPads and that type of thing. And so Office 365 provides this blanket of capability so that if you're typing OneNote, if you're using OneNote to capture notes in a PC, you can later then, of course, go to your phone and open up that OneNote and see all of your information, and it's automatically synchronized across all your devices. Another key element of the Office 365 Productivity Suite is this notion of real-time notifications. So the ability to have a notification, say, when a colleague makes an update to a Word document or maybe to an Excel spreadsheet, having the ability to, one, have the notification sent to your device or sent to your phone, and then two, being able to go in and actually see what the changes were. So this is all part of some of the capabilities that are being enabled through modern technology like Office 365. And when we think about Office 365 elevating your business, it's really across four areas. The first one, as I've alluded to, is this notion of being able to work whenever, wherever. Modernizing productivity is all about connecting people to ideas, as well as sharing information within the business from an anytime and anywhere perspective. Also, there's a reach factor here for your customers, the ability to share documents very easily and provide and use business class email services so that your productivity can stay high and you can reach your customers in effective ways. Security is very important when we talk through modern productivity and the innovation wave that cloud services has brought. And so the ability to streamline the IT process while at the same time making sure that the business security policies are being met with enterprise-grade protection and business continuity. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in next week's webinar around security, but you certainly must have that notion whenever thinking through how Office 365 can take on the productivity challenges of today. And then the last one, which is one that, in my experience has been one that's kind of an outcome after, is that once an organization has, quote unquote, migrated to Office 365, then they are always on the current wave of products and technologies. So it's really about investing in what's next, maximizing the technology investments being made, while at the same time reducing those short-term costs, and then ensuring that your organization always remains ready for the future. So an example of this is, for example, if you migrate your email to Office 365, then the days of having to go through server upgrades, of upgrading the Exchange server, maybe 3 years out after the first server has been put together, those days are gone because now Microsoft manages that for you on your behalf. So you'll always be ensured that you'll be on the latest and best versions of those services. So this is just one of those benefits that I think a lot of customers don't quite realize when they're looking at Office 365, but in a lot of ways Office 365 allows your organization to always be on the current software, both from a services perspective as well as from a desktop or a client perspective. So to kind of dive into each of these scenarios, first off, I mentioned that the ability to be able to connect with any device and have an opportunity to render content is an important feature of Office 365. The consistent experience is something that a lot of people I've spoken with hadn't really realized. When they think of Office, Microsoft Office, they tend to think about that version that runs on the desktop PC. But then when they consider running that same, accessing that same information on, say, a mobile device or a tablet device, they're pleasantly surprised to see that the fidelity, the experience is top-notch. It is a lot of emphasis that Microsoft has made over the last few years is that they recognize that the post-PC world is here, and that being able to render the content as well as work with content in Office is an important factor in looking at tablets and mobile devices. So the idea here is that when you have an Office 365 subscription, you actually can install the full Office desktop onto up to 5 PCs or Macs, but you also get to carry that same license throughout other devices. So it's one license for multiple devices. And it allows you to really meet all the working styles with the intuitive touch and the mobile experience across both the smartphones and the tablets. The other important thing to think about with Office 365 and the modern productivity discussion is that the ability to really have access to your documents no matter where you are. Office 365 provides a common set of tools that are very familiar with the traditional Windows PC user, such as drag and dropping files into Office 365 OneDrive for Business. OneDrive for Business, the way to think about that product is it's effectively a hard drive in the sky, so to speak. It's a way for you to upload your content into the Office 365 services and then always have them available, as well as having them automatically saved and backed up to the cloud. Other thing I want to point out is that in the PC world, you also have the ability to sync files offline. So if you think of a scenario where perhaps you're traveling and maybe you're in a place that doesn't have consistent Wi-Fi or perhaps no Wi-Fi at all or no online connectivity, you can still access your files by using the sync feature and having those files available to you on your PC's hard drive. And then last but not least, Office 365 is all about finding your information quickly and really allowing you to keep your productivity at a high level. So the ability to quickly find and access files that you recently interacted with is a key feature. Whenever you're entering Office 365, any of the applications, it always keeps tabs of the last files that you open. So you don't have to go and hunt and peck the next time you open up a spreadsheet that perhaps you had worked with or you'd interacted with the previous day. Also pointing out that that same experience spans all devices. So not just the PC, but if you're using an iPad later in that same afternoon, you'll see your most recent files there as well, and you can of course access those and work with and continue to work with those files just as you had on the PC. And then the ability to access everything from the browser. We know that there's currently a generation entering the workforce that has really grown up, if you will, around using web browsers to do everything. And so Microsoft recognizes that and has built their products to have a high fidelity in the browser experience. So the idea is that you can utilize a complete web-based solution that includes all the Office products as well as Outlook and transition seamlessly between those desktop and web-based applications. And of course, at the same time, be able to access and manage and have an opportunity to edit all your documents online. So one thing also that comes with this is the ability to actually edit content within the browser. So Microsoft has put a lot of emphasis on the ability to have a high fidelity experience, whether you're using the traditional productivity applications that run on your local PC, or being able to use a web browser and being able to go in and edit a PowerPoint presentations, as this example shows on the screen. So the fidelity is very high, the experience is very consistent, and so whether the end user prefers to use a web browser or perhaps they prefer to use the more traditional Windows-based applications, they'll have the same experience and be able to make edits accordingly. And then when we think about productivity, of course, you have to consider audio and video. So with Skype for Business, Microsoft has really put a huge amount of innovation around the ability to join meetings with one click. For those of you who've worked with other conference call providers, you know that sometimes there's typically a rather long digit access code you have to type in to access a conference. With Skype for Business, it's simply one click. You click the Join Meeting button and you're brought into the conference. Skype for Business also provides the ability to share the presenter's screen, whether that be a PowerPoint application, maybe a document. You can share effectively anything as long as it's displayed in the computer screen. And then communication with very clear audio and HD video. So the ability to really see the people that you're working with and having the ability to collaborate with them, and then also obviously get a higher level of connection in being able to see their facial expressions and work with them in a virtual way. And really, there's new ways you can connect. So it's not just about using audio to talk through discussions. It's also about being able to provide real-time whiteboarding. So, much like you would do perhaps if you were together with a team in a room using a whiteboard, you can provide the same capability with Skype for Business through their real-time whiteboarding application. You can also go through and have active Q&A. So if you have a larger organization and you want to be able to get a quick feedback or a quick poll, you can actually provide that as well through Skype for Business. And so really for Skype for Business, this is really one of those areas that I think, again, customers that I've worked with in the past have looked at this technology and recognized that it can really fundamentally change the way they go about their own productivity. So for example, with something like Skype for Business, where I can reach out to someone with a simple instant message versus sending them an email, we've actually seen some productivity gains in that very simple questions can be resolved within minutes versus an email chain, which, as you may know, as you probably have all experienced, can take time for people to go back through their inbox and respond to mail. So Skype for Business provides that kind of instant communication, that instant Q&A capability, so that you can get along with your day. And of course, you can use Skype for Business to share content as well. So if you're having a conversation with someone and they're wanting to maybe look at a document, maybe not necessarily share your own screen, but they want to be able to access that document, you can of course copy and share documents directly within the Skype for Business application, which of course they can view. So with that audio and video, we then kind of start thinking through the ability to work together in the real-time sense, the ability to co-author documents and really quickly collaborate with others. So think of it as a way for you to, for example, take a Word document and have maybe 2 other people looking at your changes as you're making them in real time. And again, they don't have to be on a PC to see those changes. They can experience those changes as they're being made in a mobile device, in this case on a tablet device, and see exactly what changes are being made in an application or in the document. So staying current with real-time updates is important. The ability to have notifications. Imagine if someone had made an update to a document, you can actually ask Office 365 to notify you when changes are being made to that document, and then more importantly, be able to see what those changes are once you open the document later on. And so being able to share these documents in a secure way and collaborate across all kinds of form factors of desktops, tablets, and mobile devices, this is a very key feature of Office 365. And then, of course, really the underpinning technology, if you will, that allows for that broad collaboration is a product called SharePoint. So SharePoint is really a way to share and manage content, provide the ability to empower teamwork, the ability to have multiple individuals be able to review as well as work on documents in real time and seamlessly collaborate across the entire organization. And as you can see from the screen here, the SharePoint experience refactors itself for the mobile device versus a PC device, but the fidelity is very high. And we, with Microsoft's focus around ensuring that a high experience across all devices, it refactors it accordingly so that you can get along and have the high productivity. So of course, boosting productivity is important, but also understanding that without sacrificing security is another part of the conversation. And as I mentioned earlier, next week's webinar will feature a security discussion, and we'll talk much more about some of the capabilities here. But as sort of a teaser for that webinar from this slide, it's a couple things I want to make sure we get across. One is, the ability to control identity and access in the cloud is very important. When you have all your content in Office 365, knowing who's accessing what and if they have the proper authorization is important. So controlling that identity and access in the cloud is a very important piece of the technology. Going to an identity-driven security model, so having the ability to have comprehensive, intelligent protection against today's advanced attacks. This is all built into the security model around Office 365. And then being able to manage mobile devices and applications. While we've talked a lot about being able to have these experiences across these devices, of course, it's important to be able to manage those devices and effectively ensure that the appropriate people are authorized to access that material. And then protecting the information, having the ability to safeguard the corporate information. This information obviously is critical to your business, so you want to make sure that it's properly protected. And then virtualizing the desktops. This is something that we'll talk a bit more in next week's webinar, but effectively delivering and managing the Windows experience desktops and applications on all devices. So the ability to effectively provide that high virtualized experience across a variety of different device types is another important concept here. So with that kind of as the stage set, I want to bring in Ben Goldfarb, who is the Vice President at Nauset Construction. And really, Ben, first off, thank you for your time. I appreciate you, jumping on and sharing some of the experiences that your own organization has had as a result of bringing Office 365 into the organization.
Well, I'm glad to join you, Chandler, and everybody else.
Fantastic. Well, so yeah, go ahead.
Why don't I just quickly about Nauset, just to give a little background on our organization. So Nauset's a 40-person commercial general contracting firm based in Needham, Mass, and we provide construction management and design build services to clients throughout New England. So we work our clients are in various industries, including medical, senior living, education, commercial office, the hospitality sector, as well as some light industrial clients. So those are the types of projects and industries that we work in. And then in terms of demographics of Nauset and our employees, so about half of our staff work full-time remotely outside of the office, and the balance of the staff mix their time in between being in the office and then having meetings in the field. So this is where our investment with Office 365 has definitely come into play. And as Nauset's grown, so have our needs for remote data accessibility, sharing, continuity, and security and data backup have really expressed themselves. The need, and before we had that, there was definitely a lack of resources there.
Right, absolutely. Well, I guess one of the first things that I think everyone might be interested in would be, what were some of the deciding factors for Nauset to, take those steps and start looking for ways to take advantage of the productivity innovation that Office 365 provides?
Sure. So we were on another hosted email exchange provider, and the service was relatively consistent. It was decent, but they were having some challenges as well. And at the same time, there were other types of maintenance investments that Nauset was carrying over the years, such as the Microsoft Office volume licensing. That was an added cost. So when iCore brought Office 365 as a potential solution to Nauset, basically just for the same cost of just transferring our exchange to Office 365 just to host our email, that was about the same cost or less. And then in addition to all that, we got the latest and greatest Office 365 products. So all the MS Office documents that we had to maintain in terms of versions was automatic. So that plus all the other bells and whistles that you've kind of highlighted.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So when you think about some of the challenges, you alluded to a few of those early on, but let's maybe focus a bit on the nature of Nauset's business. I would imagine as a construction company, you have quite a few, if not the majority of remote workers who are in the field, on sites and of course working, working through the projects. Talk to me a little bit about the challenges you saw from a remote worker perspective and how Office 365 addressed those.
Yeah, so before Office 365, we had a real challenge in sharing data and collaborating between the project management staff and other staff in the office and other partners as well outside of Nauset with the field operations staff that are, either in a site trailer or in a field office of sort. So with Office 365, we're all working out of the same data silos, so to speak, using OneDrive, and we're able to, much more easily keep that data and manage that data in one place and share it.
Absolutely.
That was big.
Absolutely. And speaking of that data, I would imagine that security is probably a primary focus there, and making sure that the right people are accessing the right information. From a security perspective, what were some of the things that Nauset thought through and collaborated with I-Corps around? What were some of the key areas there?
Well, another challenge before Office 365 was access to our server. So we still have on-prem servers on site that host some of our other applications that we use to manage the projects. So before that, it was a challenge for us to allow access to individuals outside of our firewall and out into the field. But with Office 365, I-Corps was able to roll in, I would call that our second phase. We kind of attacked the Office 365 investment in phases, and we're still working on that, which we'll get into. But from a security standpoint, implementing the enterprise mobility and security function, and in particular, the two-factor authentication was huge for us.
Absolutely, and being able to have the security data plan in mind, taking advantage of Office 365's capabilities around digital rights management. So, for example, potentially annotating an Excel spreadsheet that can be viewed by, say, a manager, but then policies are in place so that if you're, a team worker or maybe you're a person on another team, the ability to not be able to print or view that same document. So having that kind of very granular level of security, I would imagine, was probably pretty useful.
Absolutely. From a control standpoint, yeah. So certainly the senior management staff, there are certain documents that are live and involve collaboration, but being able to lock it down to certain levels, as you've stated, has definitely proven to be useful.
Fantastic. And then I would imagine also in this particular space, there are vendors that are working with your teams in the field, and having the ability to share information and ensure that information is not being improperly shared outside that vendor relationship. I would imagine that was something that was a fairly important guideline for the implementation.
Absolutely. So we deal with a typical project will have 20 to 40 subcontractors on it, and oftentimes we're issuing communications, whether they're requests for information or sharing building plans to them, documents, and being able to use OneDrive and the other tools within the suite have definitely helped make the efficiencies and the security much more seamless and protected. And in addition, another challenge that just came to mind is Nauset's and I-Corps' ability to manage the devices in the field and support them, because they're rarely in the office. So another component of that EMS implementation to Nauset was the Intune and being able to remotely support those devices and push out either application updates or applications themselves. That was also huge for us.
Absolutely, and you're giving a little bit of a preview for next week's webinar, but Intune is a phenomenal product in that it allows you to effectively allow organizations to push out content and applications, but only do it in basically a sandbox way on, say, a person's personal mobile device. So, for example, if you have an iPhone, you can use Intune to kind of carve out a secured area on that iPhone for organization content to be allowed to access as well as stored. And then if for some reason that person leaves the organization, that same Intune product can take that information off the device. So it's a nice way to make sure that someone doesn't inadvertently walk out the door with with important business information shared through Office 365.
Absolutely.
So from a documentation perspective, I would imagine that Nauset probably works with a lot of documentation on your typical projects that you're working on. Share a little bit about what some of the improvements you saw or some of the productivity gains made, going to an Office 365 solution from a document management perspective. What were some of the things that really came out as a huge benefit?
Well, in addition to the OneDrive, that was the first big step for us in allowing that remote accessibility and control of the documents. And even speaking, from a person that kind of mixes their time from the office, in the office and in the field. I mean, just having that ability to save a document or save a presentation in OneDrive and then leave and drive to, another state and be able to access and utilize the application on my phone or a tablet, en route. And once you're there, it was a real eye-awakening experience. It was great. No more need for thumb drives or forgetting to upload, the latest and greatest version of what you just did on the thumb drive. And then second to that, in terms of the field, and I don't think we're quite there, SharePoint is obviously the next phase of Nauset's implementation of Office 365, where we plan to leverage it even further and almost use it as a project extranet, so to speak, where we can share not only internally within our company, but with our vendors.
Absolutely. I like what you said about the kind of the multi-device description, where you have a document, maybe you're working on it on a PC, and then you get to the site and you're able to open it up on a tablet device or perhaps a mobile device using cellular technologies, and having that same fidelity and just having it, the document there, and just continuing on, leveraging it for the projects. That's something that I think for a lot of people who are first getting exposed to Office 365, it's a very pleasant surprise to see Office applications on what would have been 5 years ago competitive technologies for Microsoft. They really have embraced the iOS and the iPad devices, as well as, of course, the Android devices from a tablet and mobile perspective. So I think Microsoft has done some really great work to kind of make sure that there are no second-class citizens when it comes to accessing that content. These devices have advantages of rendering information, and so Microsoft really works hard to leverage that when sharing the content that's provided through either OneDrive for Business or for SharePoint. It's very consistent and has really, I think, provided quite a bit of a productivity gain in transitioning between devices and be able to work on that same content.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, just the experience itself, just with using PowerPoint or Word, being able to, you pick up in a pinch on a plane, pick up your smartphone and be able to edit a document, and it's pretty much the same as, minus the size of the screen. It's pretty much the same experience and control of that document. So it's really proven to be useful to Nauset.
Absolutely. And really, so when you think about, going beyond the content and you start thinking through actual interactivity between colleagues and team members. Skype for Business is something we discussed earlier, and Skype for Business is one of those technologies that really provide that kind of quick sense, quick presence, if you will. It can allow you to know if someone is available, if they're sitting at their desk, or if they're in the field, or maybe in a meeting or a different conference call. Their status is readily available through Skype for Business. From a Nauset perspective, I would imagine that there's probably some scenarios where having the Skype for Business capability would make a lot of sense. Is that something that you're looking at, or is that something you started working with within your field teams?
It's something that we are going to be implementing as a next phase in terms of using it, rolling it out across the board. We think of it more as taking our current weekly conference calls with the teams to the next level, and introducing obviously the visual aspect and be able to talk to people, or having a superintendent be able to walk around with their tablet and kind of show during the conversation points of interest or challenges at the job site to the team back in the office. So it's to us, it'll be taking it to the next level. We're almost there. We haven't rolled it out yet, but that's the next step, or one of the next steps for us with Office 365.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think it opens up some new scenarios when you think about the ability to not only describe the site, but then be able to actually show live streaming video of what's happening on the construction site. I would imagine that would be something that would be highly valuable to those back at the HQ or the head office. Absolutely. To get a sense of what's going on the project and how things are progressing there, and the ability to record that information as well. I did not mention that in my discussion, but Skype for Business allows you to record sessions. So, for example, if you have a group of people coming together, and maybe one or two key people aren't able to join that conference call, you can actually record the call and then make it available via Office 365 through a service called Stream. So you can upload the recorded audio and video. It also records any content that was shared. So if you presented a PowerPoint presentation, you can actually record that entire discussion and then make that available for offline viewing for others to look at later on. So think of it, one scenario that I could think of with Nauset would be if you had maybe some standard ways of running a project on the site, recording what's going on there, and then potentially using that for employee training or for new hire orientation. That's Absolutely. Another scenario that could really open up some interesting things. So enabling these technologies really starts to really kind of open up some new ways to bring productivity to a new level, as well as, of course, help with onboarding.
No, there's no doubt that that's a great point, and I didn't even think about the whole training aspect, which is obviously a huge part of our industry as well as many, but that'll be a useful tool. We got to get going even faster, Chandler.
Well, we're going to definitely get you there, no doubt. So, just to kind of go to the slide here where we talk about the Nauset experience and the productivity solutions, you'll see on the slide here that it's a combination of Office 365 with the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite, but then having an IT partner to kind of help put it together and funneling that into a very mobile, highly efficient employee information that's backed up and recoverable, and has a reduced footprint in terms of your data center or your infrastructure, your physical infrastructure that you at one point were using to host that content and to run mail and that type of thing, as well as being able to provide that true digital transformation. I want to kind of just quickly cover off on the productivity outcomes, and I think we've kind of covered through these, but I want to kind of step through each one of these real quickly, just to make sure we reinforce the point that this really is a transformative capability, and the ability to leverage Office 365 across all of these devices, anytime, anywhere, has really opened up some new opportunities. So from when you look at this slide, Ben, I think it's important to kind of say that from the first bullet, which is mobile efficient employees being remote in office, and you talked about that. is there anything that you've seen that really has taken Nauset in a direction that you weren't necessarily expecting in terms of that mobility? Was there anything there that was really interesting to see?
I just think that the level of documentation and control of the documents and the consistency, I think, is just heightened. It's improved since we've implemented it. It's a lot easier. Our staff are gravitating towards it more, and it's just across the line. It's just much more efficient, I think, as well.
Absolutely. Now, one thing we didn't really talk about yet was the notion of having backed up information. I would imagine, yeah, no doubt. I would imagine prior to Office 365, you probably had a solution or maybe solutions that effectively made sure that your information was safeguarded and could be recovered. From a backup and recoverability perspective, what's been the experience for Nauset there in terms of working with Office 365?
Yeah, so before Office 365, it was a huge challenge with remote workers. A lot of them had their own or have their own laptops in addition to tablets, but if someone happened to be unfortunate enough to get a virus, or it has happened, one scenario, somebody had their laptop backed over at the end of the day by a car and
oh, no.
crushed this gentleman's laptop, and
right.
They hadn't had time to pretty much use the old school backup of the hard drive and the data, so a lot of that data was missing. Now everything is saved, in OneDrive in the cloud, and if that happens again, at least we can, it's a cost and a time issue, but at least the data resides in the cloud and we're able to get that person a new piece of hardware and back it up.
Absolutely. I'm sorry to hear about that gentleman's hard drive, but certainly leveraging a technology like OneDrive for Business and Office 365, you have a common copy of that document. So if the device is lost or if the device is damaged and cannot be accessed, that content still lives. And oh, by the way, provisioning a new laptop, I would imagine, means that content's quickly accessible, just from the fact that it's in the cloud and that you don't have to do a physical copy of those files from a thumb drive onto that new laptop.
Yeah, the whole process is much more streamlined, so that's also been a big asset to us.
And then from a employee perspective, I would imagine that having this kind of cohesive experience of working with content on a traditional laptop or PC, and then, as you say, going to the field site and having maybe a smaller form factor like a mobile device or a tablet, I would imagine that you've seen some gains there as well.
No doubt. Yeah, so everybody's working on the same version, which was a challenge in the past. Sometimes the field would be their version would be out of date, or they just wouldn't have access to the data. Now everybody's pretty much on the same platform using the same level of tools. So across the board, the employees are much more happy and much more efficient, it seems like, with all the processes and collaborating back at the office with the office. So that's been a positive experience.
Absolutely. And of course, the other benefit that I mentioned earlier was, having that cohesive experience, but also making sure that their devices are are updated with the latest Office 365 applications. So always having the most recent and best version of Office at their fingertips, so to speak. I would imagine that's something that was a big benefit for you as well.
Big benefit. It's reduced, in the past, before Office 365, we would get calls about, gentlemen in the field receiving documents from outside industry partners or vendors and not be able to open them up, or they didn't format correctly because they were on a legacy version. So it's kind of eliminated that issue.
Absolutely. And then last but not least, of course, is the productivity discussion without compromising data security. You made mention earlier in the conversation about the ability to use Intune to manage those mobile devices that may be personal devices used by your colleagues and the team members, but yet also need to make sure that they're secured and that they're only accessed by the right appropriate personnel. You mentioned multi-factor authentication as part of that process. I would imagine once that's been rolled out, you probably sleep better at night. But talk to me about the what that's done in terms of making sure that you can push content to the sites and not have a higher amount of security around that content.
Yeah, so I guess starting with the EMS, I was pleasantly surprised on how easy it was to implement. I guess there's kudos to I-Corps for that and making the process kind of seamless. But not only that, but obviously nobody likes change, and it's hard to roll out new policies and new steps. Everybody's job's already difficult as it is, and now we're allowing field operations to dial in to certain areas of our environment in the office. And then all they have to do is, basically it's one extra step of hitting accept on their phones. If they have their mobile device, they're able to do that. And if somebody happens to learn of their password or steal it, this is a way around it. So I definitely sleep better at night and was very pleasantly pleased on how well it was accepted with little to no, uproar from the staff. So that was easy. And then Entune, again, just being able to, in one location, update, push out, whether it's new product, new apps that we're implementing here across the board at Nauset, or just providing version updates. It's just so much more efficient, not having to send out, boots on the ground to visit the different sites to do these upgrades is huge, obviously.
Yeah, that's a great
standpoint.
Absolutely, that's a great point. We often think about the security aspects, which are very important, but then there is that kind of management aspect where, rather than having to have those devices be brought into the office, or like you said, send someone out into the field to go and update, manually update those devices with the Intune product, you have the ability to push out those policies and then ensure that they get applied once the device connects back up. So I'm sure that's a huge advantage from having to, send out the IT guy, as they say, around all the sites to go and update all those devices. It's much more seamless.
Well, Chandler, they love to see the IT guys, but now there's less of a need, I guess, and it's much quicker, especially with traffic.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, so some of the key takeaways from our discussion, obviously there's a huge boost of productivity with Office 365's cloud capabilities and those business benefits, which we've talked about, the security side, the collaborative side, opening up kind of new scenarios like we discussed today around potentially using Skype for Business and recording content for readiness and training. And obviously, for Nauset, I would imagine that productivity boost was something that you've seen. I would imagine you've seen some changes in the way the organization, thinks about, moving projects forward. And with your experience, I would imagine also that there's a lot of conversations around, how can we start taking on more capabilities and start taking on, thinking about, leveraging more aspects of the platform, which is something that, of course, as a partner in I-Corps, we're obviously very interested in doing. But at the same time, making sure that the data is secure in the cloud, and that only the people who are authorized and have been properly authenticated can access that information through the enterprise mobility and security, which is what you mentioned earlier.
That's right.
Any other key takeaways you want to share with the audience today?
I'm just looking forward to, again, I don't know if we'll ever completely utilize all of it, but we definitely are looking forward to what I'm calling phase 3 and moving all of Nauset's environment into the cloud and really leveraging SharePoint to its fullest extent, because right now we're relying on other applications to either collaborate or store information and collaborate with project partners, and being able to build out SharePoint and use it to its full advantage will be key. So it's something I'm looking forward to partnering with I-Corps, and I think that I know to date that the transition, it's always scary from somebody that's responsible for the IT environment and having to report to all the employees on their experience. It's been smooth. So
very good.
That's definitely valuable.
Very well. So just to kind of close out the conversation, I want to just quickly share for the audience, and of course you know this well, Ben, that iCore, we focus on managed services, IT outsourcing, and cloud computing. Our headquarters are in Boston, Massachusetts. We're in the Schraff Center building, and we were named the 2016 Microsoft Northeast Partner of the Year. So Microsoft bestows that on select partners throughout the country and actually throughout the world who best demonstrate effectiveness with the products and effectiveness with their technologies. We are also a CRN MSP 100 and Tech Elite year over year, so we're consistently in that. And then we're also a top IT consulting firm in Massachusetts, as outlined by the BBJ.